the Cadillac Farm as far as I understand it, and I really have enjoyed my time on Mountain Street. I'm here, I've been asked to talk about wetlands. I'm a scientist, and I've been asked to tell you a little bit about my credentials. I started as a chemistry major at Cornell University. I had Bill Nye was in many of my classes there, so I'm going to do a little Bill Nye demo for you on one aspect of wetlands, the important one I think for all of you sitting here. And I ended up as a geneticist at NC State. I've done a lot of work on conservation and also the paperwork that I guarantee you don't want to face when it comes to rare species in Nunji-Swap. Anyway, let me just demonstrate something really important here. This is truly a Bill Nye type of thing. I was thinking about it. I'm going to show you what happens with impervious surfaces in wetlands. So
impervious surfaces meaning you're talking about the
right.
The road.
Well, I did buildings, roads, driveways. Denise, I'm just going to move down a little bit for you. Can you all see? So there's two poles. You can crane your neck. Shall I put in more in the middle? Each one represents land and water, your water table. And I have you all remember the principle of Archimedes. So I have two equal volume items. Sponges. These are your wetlands, and all those plants in the wetlands have big roots that love water. They suck up water. In fact, some wetland plants even suck up harmful heavy metals. So there's a ton of research and a lot to be said, which is why I'm only going to focus on surfaces. The other is a almost equal volume impervious surface. Nothing can flow. So if you have a heavy rain in your wetlands, I'm just going to add the wetlands to this water, and this worked at home. You know, and I can push them in. What they do is they're going to soak up all that water, and you're not going to get anything flowing out. But if you start to add roads, or you take away wetlands, which is what Alternative 5 is doing, what happens, and it's going to almost leak like paper towels, you guys, in case it does, is you don't have any room. You get flooding. Shall I pick it up? We're almost there. You get flooding, and there's no more room. So what Alternative 5 does is it roughly increases the paved way by 50%. There's the pavement, and Julia was pointing this out, and then there's the roadway. So the paved way on Mountain Street is much more narrow than the actual legal roadway. So the takings are described as slivers, even though the real taking is a lot of grassy area and a lot of trees and a lot of wetlands, more than 2,000 square feet that are going to be all along the road. Now the problem with that is this large amount of drainage systems in Alternative 5 is there because for some illogical reason they've increased the surfaces and therefore increased the need to do drainage systems. I don't have any questions yet back from Mass DOT. I replaced them. One of them was how many trees that are being cut down. It's not only cutting healthy trees, by the way, it's damaging the roots of a lot of trees. So the whole landscape is going to change. And one of the problems is we can't increase how many wetlands we have. Hurricane Irene could come through again. We don't have flooding now. There's actually a problem behind our hill there. I don't know who to bring it to, but there's a shared driveway that's coming down on both sides of where I live already. So I have a drainage problem, and I'll tell you, we do need modern drainage. We do need modern drainage for the creeks. But a modest, just like what you did with the Depot Road culvert, that was a really smart, how you solved that problem was really smart. I totally appreciated that. I read that in the minutes. And I feel that that's the kind of thinking we need here. It would save a whole lot of money. There's a lot of reasons to save wetlands beyond the surfaces. It's all the wildlife. And I also noticed that you've been working with the Kestrel Land Trust, something to do with property on Horse Mountain. So that's where we are in Mountain Street is a wildlife corridor. We've got a bobcat running between my house and Donna and Joe's house across the street. plenty of tracks in the wintertime. That's why the deer are getting hit. That's why the groundhogs are getting hit. So it's really, you know, for the value systems that many of us have, that beauty, that atmosphere, the quiet, the peepers, the trees, it's all part of it. Those wetlands, those stands of inland grasses are not very common anymore. And we've got heron nesting that's basically rare. So I think there are going to be a lot of red flags, and I don't know who pays for all the paperwork when you start filing all these permits. But the other last piece is I believe there are about 25 endangered species of dragonflies alone that are known to be in these inland swamp areas. So there's a lot of work potentially to do. It would be great if you could get the money, but go with alternative 4. If you could.
They started in the early 90s. Now, they took that little home truth and applied it to bike lanes. They went from give them space on the right that they're allowed to put them in space on the right. Doesn't quite carry across. They're the ones that created the guidelines that were copied over by the National Transportation, the federal agency in charge of highways, as well as a couple of other agencies, basically copied their materials, produced the standards that created complete streets. Those were then taken by Massachusetts to create the Complete Streets programs. That's where the bicycle initiative generally comes from. And some bike lanes, if they're done correctly, do make bicyclists safer. Unfortunately, the bike lanes they want to put in aren't wide enough for that. Not with the speed, not with the traffic. There was a summary of the widths of the road and the widths of various vehicles. There was two in particular. One was the lane width, which is 10 foot, and then there's another one called operating width. If you have a semi, if you have a heavy utility vehicle, if you have a lumber truck, those are considered heavy operating vehicles. The driver can be absolutely perfect. They can stay in the center of the lane, they can have perfect steering. The car or the vehicle is still going to move from side to side with things like road conditions, turns, and wind about half a foot either direction. That creates an operating width of 10.5 feet. Now, a cyclist, for their part, is going to want to stay as far to the right as possible in the bike lane. And because they don't want to scrape anything with handlebars, that's going to be about a foot from the edge. That means you've got 3 feet between themselves and the white lane. And you've got a vehicle, a large vehicle, that requires an extra half foot, which means you're going to have lumber trucks and bicycles passing at about this distance. So those of you back, this close. Not comfortable. Now, the statistics on this kind of problem are actually really lacking. Even to get an idea, you have to start cobbling together studies from Queensland, Australia, Sweden, England, and the US. There were exactly 2 I found. But what it says is that when you increase or decrease the distance by which passing occurs, you increase the rate of accidents. And it's a weird measurement, but it's about a 1% increase in the number of people doing a close pass equates to a 1 in 100 bike year accident rate. So if you have 100 bicyclists on a road, you you have a 50% chance of one accident stemming from that close pass. If you put bicyclists and vehicles in the same lane, they generally will cut around. You force the driver to stop, determine if it's safe, and then move out to a safe distance, pass, and then merge back in. If you put a bicyclist in a bike lane, they are generally treated by a driver as another vehicle. No accommodation is given. This is a known statistic. In general, it means that a driver will give a bicyclist, on average, slightly less than 1 foot, or they'll pass slightly less than 1 foot closer, about 11.2 inches on average. Someone had a little radar gun attached to the bike, so it's a very precise measurement. That difference will increase the rate of accidents. It will make biking less comfortable. Most cyclists actually have a big problem with cars doing that kind of pass. They call it getting pinched. It's a known problem. Right now, the bicyclists are able to control the traffic that passes them. If they feel it's an unsafe pass, if they see a vehicle ahead, they simply move to the left. They block the lane. When they know it's safe, they move to the right. The other thing to consider is that this bike lane will not always be perfect. I understand that there is such a thing as street sweeper. I've never seen one. There will be gravel, there will be leaves, there will be debris. All the little things that make it very, very slippery. DOT's own guidelines talk about the effect on gravel on traction. It is a known hazard. If you force the cyclist to ride in a specific space just for that purpose, you're going to get accidents from that as well. How much? That's difficult to say, but there will be an increase in accidents as a result of this. I think that's enough.
Thank you, Patrick. We did just locate one more speaker, and then we'll go to the last section. Why don't you guys, let's move this, and then you guys can speak after. So next steps, the select board and administrator have already held a board meeting that we attended July 1st and then arranged for this hearing, which we really, really appreciate. And have also talked to DOT about having a large DOT hearing in August. In addition, the DOT process is related to speed, but their design process is not addressing that issue. And so we would request a hearing to look at, or a hearing to seek input for the reduction in the speed limit, a hearing for consideration of the semi-truck exclusion. Again, we're talking about big commuter trucks. We're not talking about local traffic and exemptions or local businesses, but to discuss consideration of the semi-truck, the truck exclusion, and/or limiting truck speed and access. Also, this plan may impact Northampton's interest in this design. They officially joined this design process about a month ago, although they've been part of discussions, of course, from the beginning. This design is helpful to them because this design would open up and close the road, enabling them to not have to bear those costs of the permitting and taking and everything that's related, but to be able to lay that secondary pipe. And then finally to work to seek for other alternatives for funding to meet the town's transportation needs. Okay. On Mass DOT, we're asking the town to submit a letter for alternative 4 to seek the exemptions, additional exemptions, to seek exemptions for that alternative in the public hearing, to be inclusive of public process from the beginning of that process, and requests that MassDOT prepare a functional design report for alternative 4, followed by the hearing that they've said they will provide a 25% hearing process to work out exceptions on alternative 4, in addition to the hearing on the design. Sorry, so that was the last page, so I need to go back and make some corrections, give you guys the materials. Thank you to all. There's one more. So speakers, I just have 2 more scheduled speakers and then open floor. George, did you want to read, this is just a letter from Aaron, who is, or
Yeah, Aaron lives on Mountain Street as well, at the beginning of the straightaway. I am unable to be here as caregiver for my elderly mother. In my neighborhood between Potash Brook and including 91 Mountain Street before Beaver Brook, on a long straight stretch with clear visibility, there is no need for widening the road and there is no drainage problem. The farm fields at 107 and 96 abutting the road are active hayfields. Free access to farms and residences in this area needs to be preserved and not be encroached upon by widening. This includes 99, a former farm residence of Warner parents, and the rear acre of which is still farmed for hay, and 101, which was built by a Warner farm descendant, and today the rear portion is still actively farmed for hay, as well as the working hay farm and hay barn of John Warner, 97, and the working farm for hay and dairy animals at 91. I am opposed to Alternative 5 because it would detrimentally alter the character and use of our traditional farming neighborhood, as well as our entire scenic rural road and community. I prefer something closer to Alternative 4, but with needed revisions. I support a design with shared use travel lanes for vehicles, including farm equipment, bicycles, and in our case, pedestrians, also known as Sharrow lanes, which are well marked with standardized images of bicycles directly on the pavement and are safe as described by the National Association of City Transportation Officials and already implemented elsewhere in our state. I prefer not widening the existing road to a uniform width, but leaving, where feasible, the varying road width as it is, especially where there is already good visibility to safely share the road, such as in my neighborhood, where it is now only 20 to 22 feet wide. Vehicles would still encroach over the center line when it is safe to pass bicycles, farm equipment, and pedestrians. Except on curves, a single unbroken center line rather than double line would make sense. I support a minimum 10-foot shared use lane or wider where the existing road is wider without a white line on the right, but rather only the share the road images just described. Farm equipment would not then have to block a separate vehicle lane when there are no bicyclists or pedestrians to pass, as they would have to in Alternative 5. I strongly object to the installation of any guardrails where there are none already. We are in a wildlife corridor